My name's Ross Graber, and I'm an analyst with SiriusDecisions. And SiriusDecisions is a research and advisory firm that concentrates on the business-to-business sales, marketing, and product spaces. Now, in my role, I concentrate my research around how B2B marketers can better understand and measure their contribution to their business. And today I'm here to talk to you about how marketing attribution can fit into this picture of marketing performance. So here's what we know. Marketing is under really a never-ending pressure to present results. Investments being made, and that's got to be justified. And what we're seeing is that more and more marketing leaders are taking this mandate really seriously. Some are turning toward marketing attribution as a way to help. But one of the things that we found is simply using an attribution approach, that's not enough to improve performance. The way that we apply it, that really matters. So today, I'm going to talk about where attribution can fit in a B2B marketing measurement system, and I'll help you see how you may be able to apply it to drive better marketing performance within your organization. One of the places I'd like to start out is by talking about the different types of attribution that there are. So we're all on the same page when I say attribution, because there is variety here. We see some organizations being focused on something I would call source attribution. And source attribution really looks at where it is that demand is coming from. It looks at the functions that initiate marketing pipeline and revenue. That's different from tactic attribution, because tactic attribution is an approach for assigning revenue values back to individual tactics that our buyers may have engaged with over the course of their buyer's journey. And lastly, we have functional attribution. And functional attribution is designed to help understand how to credit different marketing functions or sub-functions for the success of deal cycles. Now, my focus today is going to be to talk about tactic attribution. This is the approach that we're seeing marketers find both most promising, but also somewhat challenging in understanding how to fit it into the ways that they work. And I think it's important to start with a little bit more detailed of a primer on tactic attribution, what it is, the flavor it comes in, and really how it works. It starts off with this concept that says every marketing tactic has a financial value that can be calculated. And if we can only connect tactic responses to revenue from won deals, judging marketing's effectiveness, that becomes a math equation. We see approaches to tactic attribution coming in two basic flavors. And those can be described as either single touch flavors or multi-touch flavors. And when we talk about single touches, what that means is that all of the value from a one deal gets assigned to a particular model from our multi-touch models, because our multi-touch models look to distribute credit across multiple touches that our buyers are engaging with. And those touches may be distributed in a way that are giving credits evenly. They may be working based on some standard assumptions or basic models, or they could be distributed in a way which is algorithmic. And I'll talk a little bit more about this as we move forward. But I think for now, what's worthwhile is to start to illustrate how the mechanics of tactic attribution may work. One of my favorite ways to describe attribution is by laying out what it actually looks like when we begin to analyze a deal. And in this particular case, what we've done is we've laid out a single instance of a deal with one revenue value associated with it of $100,000. And in this example, what you'll see is we've placed a series of marketing interactions that are occurring over the course of the deal on a timeline. And that timeline shows certain key inflection points within our selling process. You'll see stages of inquiry and marketing qualification, sales qualification as well. Now, when we look at models, which are first touch in nature, what they're really doing is selecting that first marketing interaction and providing $100,000 or full credit to that first interaction. Now, last touch models will go and apply a full credit amount to potentially the last marketing interaction before marketing qualification is reached. However, we see some other versions of this being utilized as well, where last touch can be interpreted to mean the last marketing interaction before sales qualification, or even the last marketing interaction before a deal is finally won. When we look to some of the multi-touch flavors, what you'll see next is an even touch model. And what's going on here is that we can see that there are 10 marketing interactions that have taken place, and deal credit is being assigned or attributed evenly. 1/10 of it is being assigned to each of the marketing interactions that have taken place along the way. And I find this can be a handy way to visualize what is going on with some basic types of attribution. Now, in our research, we've taken a look at why it is that B2B marketers are in fact applying attribution. And we see three primary use cases. The first is optimization. So marketers can understand and improve the performance of their tactics. We also see attribution deployed to help marketing functions with their budget allocation or the decisions that they make around how resources are distributed. And lastly, we see marketing functions hope to use attribution approaches to prove the contribution of their business. Now, of marketing to their business. In my research, what I've seen is that the strongest use case available relates to optimization. We see somewhat of a partial use case with the allocation of budget, where attribution answers part of the question, but there are other elements that are needed as well. And when it comes to proving or demonstrating that marketing is contributing a certain amount of value, that's the place where we see marketing attribution approaches stressed the most. Where I'm going to focus my energy today is talking about the strongest use case, how we can rely upon marketing attribution to help optimize our tactic performance. And when we think about optimization, one of the first questions we really should consider is, well, what is it that we're optimizing? What are we optimizing against? Because there needs to be a bigger picture. And the way we view it, what we're really optimizing against is the demand management process. And to depict that, I'm using an image of the SiriusDecisions demand unit waterfall, and that's the model that we use to help understand our demand effectiveness and how we can go about optimizing that. Now, for those of you not familiar with the demand unit waterfall, or those who need a refresher, the demand unit waterfall provides us with an internal view of how demand is flowing within our organization. And across a series of 7 stages, the demand unit waterfall tracks the volume, velocity, and conversion rates of demand as it's making progress toward close-won business. We monitor each of these things to help build an understanding of what parts of the demand creation process are performing effectively for us, but also so we can identify the parts of the process that need the most help. Now, there's one more feature of the demand unit waterfall that I think is notable for this conversation, and it warrants our attention. It's also in the name. It's this concept of a demand unit. Because the reality is, B2B buyers, they work in teams to solve business problems. And often if we're thinking about individual leads as opposed to teams, we're missing a big part of the story. The demand unit was meant to make sure that we're focusing beyond an individual lead and looking at the group of individuals who are responsible for moving buying forward. And I'd encourage you to think about it this way. Demand units, they represent an intersection of sorts. The intersection between our buying group, the team responsible for solving a particular type of business problem, and the business need or the business problem they're trying to solve. Now, if your company has a diverse portfolio of solutions, there may be multiple needs that your organization could be fulfilling for buyers. So when you measure, you're looking to understand not only who is involved, but what sort of problem they're trying to solve. And we're looking to track our progress and results against that group and that problem. Now, for today's conversation, that's probably a sufficient description of demand units to allow us to turn back to attribution and discuss where and how demand units fit and how attribution can help. So earlier I presented this this version of touch analysis to look at a deal that we're optimizing. And one of the things that I think we have to acknowledge is that first version was a little bit too simple. Most of our buying situations look more like this, where we're selling to a whole series of buyers who are working together as a team, and each of them are interacting with us to a varying degree. So if we were thinking about how we do our analysis and deal crediting based on only one buyer, we're missing a big part of the story. We've got to be able to consider the role of other buyers and how they're interacting when we are involved in a successful deal cycle. Now, what's important that I've seen at organizations who are successful deploying marketing attribution is that they approach it with a mindset other than how do we assign credit to different tactics. Instead, they're more likely to view attribution as an analysis technique. The different flavors of attribution give them a way to think about the effectiveness of marketing tactics under different scenarios. And to pick out the right models to use, we have to be pretty specific in the questions that we ask and those things that we have to understand to make sure that we can be more effective in our approaches. The most effective organizations at using attribution will typically run multiple models, and they'll use models in conjunction with one another to build out a fuller understanding of the situation. And I'm going to talk just a little bit about how we see the different models working. When I use first touch attribution, that can be a really powerful approach for helping to understand which tactics initially capture a buyer's attention. So if I'm having a hard time identifying buyers to engage with, first touch attribution can be useful. Whereas last touch attribution may be better suited to helping me identify those tactics which most commonly help our buyers cross over a certain inflection point in our process. What do I need to achieve marketing qualification? Or what's helping me achieve a stage of sales qualification? Even touch models do something different for me. They show me a full spectrum of all the direct response tactics that were involved in the deal cycle. And that can be powerful for a number of reasons. But one of the most useful ways that I've seen even touch models deployed is they give us an opportunity to identify those tactics which are rarely appearing in successful deal cycles. And if you think about optimizing out those tactics which are rarely playing a role when you're successful, that can give you a lot of room to go and perform or execute different approaches or different tactics that may have a better chance of producing results for you. When we start getting to some of the more complicated multi-touch attribution approaches like U-shaped models or W-shaped models, one of the things that I like to stress is that these models are very much an expression of what your strategy may be, because they depend on you identifying before you start which points in the buying process or in your demand process you're having the most difficulty with. Where a U-shaped model is going to prioritize initial lead acquisition and those last steps before a deal is closed, something like a W-shaped model may highlight different inflection points along the way, distributing credit in a different way. But one of the things to note, these models are a little bit more focused on how we assign credit and a little bit less focused on making sure that we're developing a really deep understanding around what tactics are working better for who and at what points in our buying process. And this works to set up what I think is a really critical reminder. We've got to make sure that we're keeping track of the bigger picture here. We can invest a lot of energy in analyzing our tactics at a very deep level of detail. And if we were going to do that, we would probably run out of time for executing. There's only so much energy we can place against analysis, which is why I'd recommend taking a step back and make sure that we understand the bigger picture of performance before we invest too much of our time and energy into taking deep dives into understanding whether one tactic or another was any better or worse or more effective or not. We only have so much time in our day, and that's where the concept of our demand waterfall factors in. Let's remember what we're using this thing for. We're trying to understand the health of our demand process. And in doing that, we're going to be looking at our stage conversions to understand, are there points in the process where conversion is lower than we'd expect, where our volumes are lagging, where it's costing us more than we think it should to help progress demand, or where our velocity is slowing down. And if I am looking at the demand waterfall and I identify areas of weakness, that is what's going to give me the ability to really focus how I approach attribution. So if I understand that I'm having difficulty activating demand, maybe I am going to skew toward a first touch model where a validation of demand is my problem. I may spend more energy analyzing the inflection points around marketing's qualification. And I may use last touch models to help me understand that and get a little bit deeper into how I understand what's going right and what's not going so well for us. Once we've identified the parts of the process that need the most help, it pays to be really precise. We want to also look to understand who among our buyers is typically involved in that stage of the process and what they typically respond to. So it's possible to perform this analysis based on buyer role or job role, or if you characterize by persona, you can look at things that way. Know the different roles that you're selling to and understand which tactics are most likely to get their attention. Now, one of the things I've seen is many companies stop their analysis with tactic types or delivery mechanisms. So they'll only look at whether it was an email or a webinar or a pay-per-click ad, which was capturing buyers' attention. I'd encourage you to extend beyond that. Look at the content focus. What is the type of content that they're responding to? And what part of the buying process was that content intended to address? There's going to be deeper information needed if you're about to adjust your tactic selection. Attribution can help you figure it out, but it pays to be precise when we think about how we ask questions of these models. This is the place where I really like to emphasize the importance of our data and our metadata in helping us understand what's going on. The processes which produce our data matter. Not only do you want to understand who's responding, but also what that tactic that they're responding to is all about, who it's for, what it's for. These are the types of things that you need to know if you are going to optimize that tactic mix to help get better results and to help improve the way demand is flowing within your organization. I usually like to offer a little bit of caution when I talk about attribution. There's an awful lot that it can do, but I like to stress the things that it's not able to do because being aware of that is important as well. Attribution is really great at dealing with direct response tactics. But what it's not so good at is capturing the interactions that take place potentially offline or those interpersonal reactions between people involved in a buying group. We should understand that when we're selling in simpler buying scenarios, where there's only one or two buyers and potentially our deal cycles happen much faster, attribution can see a whole lot more. But as our buying scenarios become more complex, as they move from things that are independent to buying that's more committee-oriented, it takes more time. More people are involved. More interpersonal reactions and actions happen that we're not able to see and detect in our business systems. And attribution doesn't have a way of starting to calculate for that. This is really a matter of just understanding how this works, knowing that it's a limitation, and being prepared to capture information about how our buyers relate to one another in different ways. Attribution may not be the way to do that, but interviewing our buyers, that is a way we can learn more about how it is that they interact with one another. So as I summarize here, I wanted to make just a couple of recommendations. Time spent, energy spent upon optimizing your execution is the most effective way to get value out of your attribution approach. Use the demand waterfall to help understand the best parts of the process to go and apply your analytical energy and attention. That's going to make sure that you're using your efforts well. Go out of your way to help your teams tailor the types of attribution models they use to the specific questions that have to be answered if your business performance is going to improve. And I'd also say, be really realistic about what attribution's able to tell you and what it's not. And one of the things that I recommend to all of my clients is that attribution can be part of a solution, but the greater solution involves making sure that we're developing a layered approach to reporting, one that looks to depict the relationships between the tactics that we're executing, but marketing's performance overall, and then marketing's performance against the greater business goals. That's how we're going to be able to express back to our stakeholders the role of marketing in really making a positive contribution to our business. With that, I'd like to thank you and turn it back over to Michael and Bonnie.
Okay, so hi everyone, I'm Bonnie, creator. Hopefully you can see my slides and you can hear me okay. I'm the CEO of Full Circle Insights, and at Full Circle Insights, we've spent years helping marketers accurately measure and track the impact of their marketing campaigns on pipeline and revenue. We're very passionate about this, and we've been doing a bunch of different things to help folks, whether it's measuring digital marketing or different kinds of integrated campaigns, really working on revenue operations, or even ABM, account-based marketing scenarios. Most folks are doing some sort of combination of response-based measurement and account-based measurement, and so we help them all those different scenarios. And we're really excited to present to you about attribution. It's one of my favorite topics. A lot of the people that we work with spend a lot of money on sales and marketing. More than half of their sales or revenue is spent on marketing and sales. And so measuring the impact of marketing on sales has become a very key driver for those businesses. So in the bad old days, and this is where I kind of came from, as a 5-time VP of marketing, I always wanted to measure my marketing, but I couldn't really get good visibility out of the tools that I was working with, and so that's really why we started Full Circle. So here I've got just a listing that comes right out of Salesforce. You see that's top performing campaigns by number of leads, and if we prioritized all of our campaigns based on the number of leads that we generated, we'd be doing parties all the time. You can see here B2B Fusion Dreamforce 15 party list, 2,523 leads. I've circled demo requests below at 210 because what you get from prioritizing based on revenue impact is completely different than what you get from lead generation. So here you see demo requests, and this is from an attribution model of the highest impact on for this particular period with demo requests. And so just for pure prioritization of different types of tactics, what this tells you is, heck, demo requests have a big impact on our sales. What can we do, or what kind of programs can we do to implement or get folks to submit demo requests? So moving forward with all of our customers, we've actually developed a method. We call it the Full Circle method. And the reason that we call it the Full Circle method is because this is a set of best practices that over time, all of our customers, all of our really good customers that are getting a lot of benefit out of Full Circle have adopted. And they do 4 things with these kinds of metrics. One is they use the metrics for planning. So for a particular time period, maybe you're planning for 2019, but for a particular time period, you want to know how many leads you're going to need to generate, because that will drive input into the marketing budget for that next period that you're trying to plan for. And so you want to be able to collect information, do what's commonly known as a reverse waterfall. So taking your average deal size, your sales cycle length, all your conversion rates, and then looking at how much what your sales goal is for the following period, and then figuring out how many leads you need to generate based on that information. Next, once you set up and do all your planning, of course, the next thing you want to do is figure out if you're achieving your goals. So when you do all your planning, you set goals, and then you'll want a series of reports or dashboards that establish whether you are achieving the goals that you've set. The third thing to look at is just the optimization of the process. So the folks that we work with look at this very carefully, because there's always trouble spots in these different handoffs. Ross talked a little bit about this, looking at these different transition periods. And the key one, of course, is when marketing is handing off the leads to sales. That's one of the really tricky spots. really understanding what campaigns are being followed up on, what leads are being followed up, and really getting visibility into that process. We've seen this many, many times over and over again, where you might have multiple sales organizations, and one sales organization is doing a great job in following up on leads, and they're making their number. And then we see another, maybe it's the mid-market group or the enterprise group, whatever, they haven't followed up on the leads as well, and you see that they are not making their numbers. We've seen this over and over again, where money is really being left on the table because the sales team is not being vigilant about lead follow-up. The fourth area is evaluating, and this is about evaluating the portfolio of marketing programs that we're running. So everybody's running a bunch of programs all at the same time, sometimes in sequence. And the idea, of course, is to evaluate which programs have the biggest impact on pipeline and revenue, and being able to decide which ones you're going to continue on or enhance, which ones you're going to drop or change. And so the combination of these 4 steps is very impactful, and it's very common, and I've seen this over and over again, when you do these 4 things, in combination of studying the data and having a meeting cadence, it's very, very common to get about a 30% bump in the marketing budget. I've seen higher, I've seen lower, but about 30% is really, really common. And what I mean by a 30% bump, if you have, say, a $1 million marketing budget, it's the equivalent of having a $1.3 million marketing budget. If you have a $10 million marketing budget, it's the equivalent of a $13 million marketing budget. It's really material to be able to measure and track this type of information. So again, with this best practice, what happens is we see marketing and sales align on company objectives, and then what they do is they adopt these funnel metrics and attribution, which is all about the metrics which show impact on pipeline and revenue. They have these regular meetings, sales ops and marketing ops meet together. Sometimes, of course, they'll invite on a weekly basis. They invite the demand gen folks, and then maybe the telesales or the SDR management to come into this regular weekly meeting. They study the data. They look for opportunities and areas of improvement. They'll also have a regular meeting with the executives and look at this, not weekly, but oftentimes once a month, to get together with the executives. And then in these meetings, they identify areas where they can improve and then make adjustments in the sales and marketing operations. And this virtuous cycle happens over and over again and results in that 30% bump. So the theme for this webinar is attribution, but I'm a huge fan of funnel metrics, and here's why. So when you're studying attribution, you're looking at the marketing impact on revenue, and generally, depending on the length of your sales cycle, right? If you have a short sales cycle, a couple of days, you can look at the attribution more regularly, but many of the customers that we work with have a little longer sales cycle. Could be a month, could be 3 months, could be 6 months. And because of that, you have to look at impact metrics that have a shorter time frame and shorter time scale. So that's why I'm a huge fan of funnel metrics, because they report on the whole lead management process, the volume, velocity, and conversion rates. And those are the metrics that our customers typically are looking at on a regular, they're looking at attribution metrics, but they're largely looking at funnel metrics in their weekly meetings. And I can't emphasize enough this meeting cadence, because it's cool to collect all this information, but if you don't have a meeting and discuss it and use it, you don't get anywhere. So I wanted to follow up on Ross's presentation. By the way, I'm a huge fan of SiriusDecisions. I encourage everyone to go to their summit every year. I always learn something at Summit. There's always new and innovative different models and different ways of thinking about marketing there. The next SiriusDecisions Summit is in May, and that's in Austin, Texas. So it's a little far away, but put it on your calendar, May 6th through 8th in Austin, Texas. But back to some examples. Ross teed up a series of attribution models and a way to think about attribution models, and also teed up the demand unit waterfall. But I'm just going to take 3 examples here These are fairly high-level examples, and sometimes in these webinars, I kind of regret that I can't get into more detail. So I'm actually interested in feedback from the audience here. If you're interested in diving deeper and getting more complex examples, I'd be happy to take that feedback and we can do another webinar and go into more advanced stuff. But that said, let's just look at some more high-level examples, and then we can try to dive deeper later. Okay, so these are the 3 questions. Which campaign type is driving the most sales? Question number 2, what programs drive the highest conversion rate? And number 3, which is a question that I've always asked in my career, which is, can I measure PR? Okay, so this is a series of pie charts which are based on attribution models. And you can see here there's 3 different models. Now, one of the things that Ross talked about was you want to run multiple models at the same time. And the reason for this is that you want to kind of see how the data plays out in these different models. And it's very important because the models are asking, the results of these models are asking different questions. So the model on the left here is the even spread model. And that takes all of the sales and then divides it evenly among all of the campaign touches. The first touch model, of course, takes the $100,000 example that Ross talked about and gives $100,000 credit to the first touch. So if you're looking at these 2 pie charts, you're going to see some differences, right, from the even spread to first touch. The third model I'm showing here is the result of a time decay model. And what that model does is it takes the $100,000 and it spreads it over every touch in every campaign. However, it does it in a time decay way. So the campaigns that occur earlier in the sales cycle get higher amounts of credit, and the ones that occur later get lower amounts of credit. And we can go into more detail later. But I want to highlight some of the differences in the results for each of these 3 models, and this is why it's really important to run 3 different ones. Okay, so let's look at this this orange here. This is for digital ads, and you see in this pie chart, it's set up. Each piece is assigned a dollar amount. It's in thousands. In this example, digital ads is generating or correlated with $86,000 in sales. On this next one, which is the first touch model, the division ends up being a little different, right? So in the even spread, perhaps what it's saying here is that digital touches are more commonly impacting first touch versus the overall sales cycle. So here we go. In first touch here, this is now in purple. Sorry, this is an artifact of the drawing here. But you'll see digital ads here is 125,000 is credited to digital ads. So you can see there is a difference in how these models play out. And then in the time decay model, it's something in between. So 74,000 in the time decay model. So what you're seeing here is really important. The main thing is that you want to run multiple models at the same time, and you want to experiment with models. Usually what happens, we at Full Circle, we ship with some standard models, and then over time, our customers will modify those models and do more complex things over time. So it's the same advice that Ross is giving. Start simple and get more complex as you go. The next question is, what programs drive the highest conversion? Okay, so this is a chart that's straight out of Salesforce. I want to explain it because it's kind of a complex chart. There's a lot of numbers on here. What do they all mean, and so on? Okay, so what we're seeing here is actually the original SiriusDecisions Waterfall on its side. So at the top here, you've got stages, inquiry, MQL, SAL, SQL, SQL1, and then you've got conversion rates. So inquiry to MQL, MQL to SAL, SAL to SQL, and SQL1, and then an overall inquiry to 1%. So here we've got campaign types. So we've aggregated all the campaigns into campaign types. for simplicity. So you've got advertising, email, banner ads, seminars and conferences, partners, other, and webinar. And then in this first set, these are volume metrics for each of these stages. Here you've got 2,694 in inquiry, 130 in SQL1. Here we've got percentages, and these are conversion rate percentages from stage to stage. So this is the percentage conversion from inquiry to MQL for advertising. So when you look at all this and you look at an overall metric of inquiry to 1, you can see that the overall percentage, a conversion rate, is actually quite healthy in this particular example, which is 4.8%. But if you're looking at, is there a particular campaign type that drives the highest conversion, you can see that in this particular example, email is driving the highest conversion rate of 7.9%. Now to my third question, which is, can I measure PR? This is a question that I've always wondered, but one of the things we noticed at here in our marketing at Full Circle was that whenever we had a significant press mention, there seemed to be a bump, and we just noticed this out of just observation. There seemed to be more inbound inquiries into Full Circle when we had these press mentions. And so we thought, okay, well, maybe we should try measuring this and see if we can do it. So we did. And of course, we're measuring inbound requests, so we can count those. And we spread those out over by day. So we took a period of time and we measured each day that would have inbound requests. And so you can see the results in this chart where we have in the first bar, these are days that are unaffected by PR. So these are sort of non-PR days, and the number of inbound requests we would get on a non-PR day. And then we looked at days where we had a press mention, and you can see that there was actually a pretty significant lift. We also measured this against events, and we also saw the same kind of thing with events. So this is something that I got really excited about, because with PR, sometimes folks view this as very fluffy. You can count, lots of things about PR, but impact on sales and revenue was not one of them. But now we can see that the inbound number of requests has increased significantly. You can see the lift there. So one of my last pieces of advice around all this is around where to store all the data. So putting all the data in one place is really important. Number one, sales and marketing actually sees the same data, and it just makes it a lot easier for sales and marketing to work together. It just makes sense. We like having all the data in Salesforce, because Salesforce is the sales system of record. It's the CRM that almost like a lot of people use, not everybody, but a lot of people use Salesforce. And the CRM system is the system of record for the accounting of all the sales activity. We like having all the data in one place because it gives you a lot of visibility into the bottlenecks, in particular, those places where you're doing handoffs, like between marketing and sales. And then thirdly is, in working together, it's important to have a healthy dialogue between sales and marketing. And so when you have all the data in one place, it provides a much healthier channel for feedback and discussion, because the facts are there and we're all looking at the same information. So you get better alignment, and better alignment most of the time means better revenue success. So we've talked a little bit about attribution. We've talked about some funnel metrics. We've talked about storing our data in one place. And so I'd just like to summarize here kind of the main points. First of all, I love attribution, but it's not the full picture. Attribution shows the impact on pipeline and sales, which is really important. But funnel metrics are really key to operations, because with those volume, velocity, conversion rate metrics, you can see where the bottlenecks are. And then lastly is storing all the information in one place. Inside Salesforce is what we prefer, but that place is a single source of truth so that both sales and marketing can easily see the same information and work better together. So with that, I'm going to turn this over to Michael. Michael, we got some stuff going on with the polls or with some questions?
Yeah, we actually we do have a couple of questions. The first one I'll throw out to you and Ross is, how do you capture individual lead campaign information, such as forms or UTM links? Like, how does that data, what do you use to capture the data? How does it make its way into the system?
Yeah, I think that sounds like a question for Full Circle, Bonnie.
Yeah. Okay. So we have a product called Digital Source Tracker, and Digital Source Tracker tracks anonymous touches as well as touches that convert from form fills. And so that product pushes all that information into Salesforce, and you can track that, as you saw on the example that I showed, the results of digital advertising.
Excellent. Okay. Let's see. Another question we had was, what's the best way to go about evaluating if you're using the best attribution model for your product line?
I can take a stab at that one. So I tend to view attribution models as being the best to answer a particular type of question. And earlier during my portion of the presentation, I showed you a way that you can start to gear some of those models towards the types of questions that you're getting. So if you find that you're having difficulty with initial lead acquisition or capturing the initial attention of buyers, first touch models are great. What I would be really conscious of is just making sure that we start by pegging the model we choose to the different type of business question that we're asking, at least for starters. And then I'd probably expand from there, looking at different angles at which I could start to understand how well we're performing and what different parts or different tactics I might look to optimize, replace, or improve.
Yeah, and just to build on that, Ross, it's very important to run multiple models at the same time. You really get a sense of how the data is tracked and what it looks like when you're presenting it, particularly to your management.
Especially want to thank Ross Graber and Bonnie Crater for their presentations today. We hope that you found today's content valuable, and if you weren't able to get your question answered during our Q&A session, we will of course follow up with you again via email. So thank you so much for making time to be with us today, and we look forward to seeing you on another event, or please call on us if there's anything we could do to help you on your journey with attribution and funnel metrics.